here, Grimdark, Ohio, doing another daily vlog till CincyCon, going over stuff for the deep between. So today, the only business hobby related stuff that happened was this little thing showed up from Amazon, which will be a display case that I'll be using at CincyCon. And I was able to get this alternate sculpt of the grub test printed. Um, Actually just went straight to the better resin. Didn't really do a true test print with those because I was pretty confident that everything would turn out all right, and it did. Looked great. And I'm going to talk about some of like the design philosophy between the different factions as I kind of like somewhat arrange them here, and just kind of talk myself through some of that to what kind of looks good, while also explaining the why the factions are the way they are. So kind of starting off with the Iterax here. And this is that big one, Malgora. Won't actually fit into the display case, so I'm just gonna stick that bad boy up on top. But they're kind of like the weird alien faction. They're also kind of the like big monstrous stuff. I think that's something that about every game really does well at having. If not in the visual sense of like, these guys are, spikes and weird eyes and, gross tentacly barbed bits. If nothing quite that literal, at least in the sense that, that like you almost can't relate to it, barely human sense. So, like even in settings where it's a little more like mundane, there's not really weird, strange creatures. There should always be something that really grabs that like brutal, primal, kind of a little bit scary thing in people, because some folks just they like the weird and the kind of the gross and monstrous, and that's kind of a lot of the design behind them. I wanted it to be somewhat almost silly in a way. I've had somebody told me before that they look like kind of like toys, and I think that's exactly what I wanted as a reaction, because the hobby is something I do with with my family, with my kids, and even though the setting for the game is grim and it's bleak and dark and brutal. It's one of those things. Sometimes I think stuff gets pushed where it's gratuitous for sake of being gratuitous. Stuff can be really kind of weird and disturbing without just being extra, for sake of gore and guts and stuff. So that's where they're at. Next, these two models are all I have currently for the breachers, which are actually going to be kind of like, in a way, originally the like the flagship faction, like to really show them off, and the very most human element, because they are like ragtag crews, and it's like that sense of adventure and exploration, astronauts and pirates kind of feel, but just the way things lined up, it just they've gotten a little less love than I would have liked. So they are kind of one of the less fleshed out in terms of the models. In terms of the game itself, they have way more. But look wise, I just wanted, just this like space pirate kind of look, and astronaut, and this guy's got like these cool like neons on his coat here. There it goes. And yeah, just something pretty grounded, that like almost in complete uh, contrast to them, uh, is relatable. Is something that um, you know every setting can kind of do with, where you have all these crazy monstrous things and weird things and tech and aliens and stuff, and to have just people trying to make a living on the fringes of space is just kind of a cool thing to me. um Next are these guys, the Vase, and the funny thing with them is they actually started as a fantasy theme originally. They were originally a design for a game I had a long time ago. You probably find it on the internet still somewhere. Uh, Essence of Akatos, and they were these like kind of you know almost looked robotic, even though they're from a fantasy setting, night looking guys. And I just kind of played with that and twisted and changed a few things and brought it up to fit this setting. Um, but they're here for the very kind of like beginner friendly stuff. Um, they're very straightforward. The way they play, the look and design of them. There's a lot of like flowing cape and like material pieces, and uh, it it's easy painting, and it's something that I think new players can just jump right into, and feel comfortable. Uh, and yeah, the playstyle's straightforward. I think it made sense for a faction to have that in this game. Not everything has to be, and to be fair, the game itself isn't super complicated, but some people want simple. They want low mental load, or they're new to hobbying, and it always is good to have these guys are either good at about everything, so you don't really have disadvantages and they're forgiving, or they have very straightforward gameplay, so it's easy for new players to figure it out. Um, this faction, we'll start with this guy because people have seen him before, the European technocracy's swashbuckler. Uh, they, as a faction, were kind of like, in a way, they're like the show-offs, right? So the technocracy had the best of everything, and they're in a way kind of like a decaying power. The side of it that you'll see for this initial beginning, this wave one, this early stuff, are these like shining, regal, retro robots, and swashbuckling robot knights and things like that. And you know, it's a great contrast to some of the other elements of the faction, um, because with them there's a lot of like disparity. But in terms of design, this faction's kind of like they have the best uh, of stuff. They have the best technology. They can be pretty forgiving in the game, but they aren't like insanely durable. But they're just really good at hitting really hard. People that enjoy like alpha strikes or like being a really aggressive player will really enjoy this faction. Yeah, and they've got a really cool, retro future kind of look to them. Big robots, kind of Art Deco style. And uh, and then last but not least, this is certainly my favorite faction, and it's the first faction that is almost complete. There's a few pieces that I think for year one they need for me to call it done and be wrapped up. But this is the Forsaken Tribes. So this is where that tech shaman came from. And they have like a almost like a primitive sci-fi feel to them. Yeah, this guy, he's a character. He's got this cool like tech waddle, Ramiro. And for them, they're kind of the closest thing to like a swarm faction in this game. There is one bigger model. This guy here that's based off of our family's pet bulldog Mac. He is about this. He is the same size, I believe. Yeah, same base size as Malgora, although he is much smaller. But um, he's a great kind of centerpiece to tie everything in for this faction. He comes with Isla here. They are uh, inseparable, so you don't get Isla without Mac and Mac without Isla. And yeah, so aside from him, they have the most numbers. You have these commandos, and these guys are not the best armored. You can just see from them they're kind of just tire shoulder pads and pretty plain gear. Um, and But they excel at deploying ahead, kind of like hit and run tactics, and then just overwhelming your opponent with just sheer numbers. And I didn't want it to be like a zombie faction or like a swarm of chittering creatures faction for the swarm faction for like the base release of the game. I thought it would be cool if it was the humans. And the next closest thing to a swarm faction that the game has is actually the mercenary breachers. So the two most human elements in the game are the most heavy numbered kind of swarm factions. I thought that would be kind of a cool way to do it. You have the European technocracy, which really there'll only be one, maybe two of those models out of the whole releases that are human. The rest are just robots that the technocracy's built. Then you have the V's here, and they're kind of a weird faction in the way that like it's not super clear if they're alive, if they're robots, if they're undead. They do have the keyword revenant, which I guess is kind of a giveaway, but they have a very weird, hard to pin down look to them, which I like. And then you had the Iterax, which are just weird and monstrous and gross. I also didn't want like the alien faction to have that like kind of general, you see it a lot, trope of just swarms. While they can run kind of swarmy, and they'll obviously as the game like develops over time, there'll be more variety of play between all the factions. They're really not. They're really not that. They're kind of, I would say, about mid in the power of the average model of the game. I would say the European technocracy is next, and then like the V's are definitely the most elite. I would say of the factions of the game, they have some of the best defense. I believe they are like exclusively have piercing across everything with these cool like crystal kind of phase power weapon sword things. They energize these deep shard weapons that they create, and absolutely devastating. So they reduce defense when they're attacking with those weapons, which lets them kind of chew through almost everything. And then on the other side of it, you have, down here, the Forsaken Tribes, which are the most kind of, what we would consider more current modern weaponry. There are some uh, exceptions to that. Like Isla there has this energized pistol, and the Tech Shaman does have a dormant vase blade. So it's one of their weapons, but without having been activated by the cool deep shard stuff that they do. I'll get into all that kind of lore stuff at some point, but to prevent this from being just a ramble, yeah, I just kind of wanted to show off what we're gonna see. I'm gonna probably try. Oh, I'm not gonna. I will prime all the stuff that's not just the resin pieces, and then I'm gonna try to paint as much of this as I can to really show off things. But with only so much time, see where it gets us. But yeah, a little longer today, but just kind of showing some stuff off and talking about my thoughts behind it. So hopefully somebody gets a kick out of all this, and the channel continues to grow. I think we're knocking at about 150, 140 something, 150. So that's really exciting. Hopefully 200 gets topped pretty quick, and we'll see what the next goal is. Maybe I'll start doing some giveaways to incentivize interaction and have people, more people sub. But yeah, if you have any ideas like that, go ahead and put down in the comments, and like, share, all that stuff goes a long way. Yeah, till the next one.